physiological response to stress is overwhelming for the body. It's not just psychological. It actually shuts down systems. It shuts down your visual. It shuts down your hearing.
If we go back to one of our core kind of pillars here is keeping well-being leaders well, because nobody looks after the people that do the looking after, and so this is the kind of point of wanting to start with this one. I think is put your own oxygen mask on first. You hear that a lot nowadays.
What we're seeing is we've got like stressed out leaders coming out to play with then stressed out employees coming out to play, and now we're all completely impaired with the way that we're experiencing the world and our senses, and we come together and there's these collisions happening which then just don't help obviously performance. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is the Wellbeing Leaders podcast, your one-stop shop for all things leadership and wellbeing. We're your hosts. I'm Charlotte Stebbing-Mills.
And I am Sam Harvey, and with me today, or with us today, I have the wonderful Sally Duxfield, who's a good friend of mine, business owner in New Zealand, has a wonderful retreat, which I've spent some time at. Experiential architect goes by, love that, and also is diving deep into sleep performance and a doctorate of that. Author, all-round legend, lovely human, and welcome would be the last thing to say, I suppose.
Thank you, Sam. It's delightful to be here, and thanks, Charlotte, for having me. I'm delighted.
It's nice to see you.
Yeah, we're super happy to have you.
And today we're going to look at, we were going to call it managing the stress response when leading well-being, because it can be a very stressful situation for these people who are leading well-being in organizations. But as we were talking before, Sally said, well, what I look at is, why do really intelligent people do stupid things under stress? So we're going to go with that and dive into that. So looking at why people do silly things when they're under stress in organizations.
Yeah,
how's that?
That's right. And it was what drove me into studying neuroscience. So as a ex-military officer, I was used to being in hostile environments and making critical decisions under pressure. And I was always surprised by really intelligent soldiers and airmen and perhaps sailors in different environments made really interesting, being polite, really interesting decisions while under stress. And you're like, I know you're highly trained. And if we take it to we use a metaphor of sport. I do some work with some of the New Zealand under-20s and the prospective, the young All Blacks. And I'm always fascinated by really, really highly skilled sportsmen and women make mistakes under pressure all the time. Our passing goes to pieces, our accuracy goes down. If you think of the game of rugby, which in New Zealand we can only think of the game of rugby, everything happens, and if you don't know anything about rugby, watch a video, but everything happens in the middle of the field under stress because they've got auditory exclusion. Their hearing has shut down by about 30%. So you're leading well-being in an organization, yet the people that are stressed are not responding how you expect them to. They might not take on board the conversation. I mean, how many conversations that Sam, this is what happened to you lots of time with girls, where you've said, we've talked about that. And she said, no, we haven't. And you're like, we've discussed it. No, we haven't. And it's like, or Charlotte, maybe even with your partner, where he's gone to the cupboard and he opens the cupboard door and he goes, where's the peanut butter? And you're like, it's on the second shelf, just behind the Vegemite or the Marmite. And you're like, And we walk straight up there as females and can just pick it up and show it to them. But because they've got this tunnel vision. And so the physiological response to stress is overwhelming for the body. It's not just psychological. It actually shuts down systems. It shuts down your visual. It shuts down your hearing. So leading is not just about the delegations. It's actually about the game face. It's actually, before we step into the office, it's, have we got that face on? Because this face can make you think it's a saber-toothed tiger. And just walking through an office, how many times have you walked through an office and everyone's gone looking at somebody because they've got a face like a slapped bottom and a grumpy face?
We see that so often here, with regards to, like, everybody's kind of walking around a little bit like that, because there's definitely a lot of education and there is a lot of like leadership training, but there's not as much, I think, inside these leadership trainings that, and Sam, you'll know this better than I, is the emotional experience and the physical experience of what somebody's going through, that the stress response, right? And it's what we're seeing is we've got like stressed out leaders coming out to play with then stressed out employees coming out to play, and now we're all completely impaired with the way that we're experiencing the world and our senses, and we come together and there's these collisions happening which then just don't help obviously performance.
Absolutely. And we think it's personality, we think it's psychological. And in fact, it's just our neurobiological response to this perceived. Remember, this is all happening below our consciousness. So,
Mm,
and that's one of the things with the brain and with PTSD and with depression and trauma, it's so hard to treat
mm,
because below our consciousness, our brain is using its eyes and its ears to look for safety cues. And if it
mm,
can't find safety cues, if it sees grumpy faces, if it can't see an exit, there's a tone of voice that triggers you. If you see that, then what's happening is that this response, this fight flight response is coming through.
mm.
And so in the office, we've got all this friction and it's over nothing. So it's really, really hard to lead and be extraordinarily uh, disciplined with the way
Mm.
you present and your pitch and tone.
Wow. So you mentioned, Sally, that loss of hearing by up to 30%. There's loss of vision as well, isn't there?
Yeah, you'll go from 210 degrees under pressure. You can just see your fingers, and then it goes down to 70 degrees. So think of a set of traffic lights that you've driven through one morning on the way to work, and you're saying to yourself, how did I can't even remember driving through that intersection. How did I even get to work?
Yeah.
And that is purely because what it's doing now is the body doesn't want you to hear. It's trying to keep you focused on the perceived danger. I don't want
Right.
you to hear what's going on out here because that's going to distract you. And I don't want you to see the periphery. I want you to focus on that perceived danger. And I need to punch it or I need to run away from it.
Mm,
And because then your heart rate's going up. And what's the skill that I think we need to teach more of is knowing how you physically feel when this starts to happen. So how do you feel, Charlotte, when you start to get stressed? What happens to your body?
Oh, I start to just feel tense and heavy.
Yeah. So why do you think we're starting to feel tense? What's our muscles getting ready for?
Right, fight or to run. Depends on the
Yeah.
situation. Yeah.
Yeah. It's getting ready to take it out. It's in front of me. So my neck's getting sore. My lower
mm,
back's getting sore because the blood is pooling.
mm,
It's coming around to all my primary organs. My breath rate's gone up.
Yeah.
So my skin starts flushing. My fingertips might go really, really cold. I don't know if you've ever noticed that if you're anxious about something, going on stage, public speaking, get a bit chilly, that's the blood pooling. It's coming out of the peripheries and it's pooling. So as soon as you recognize that, you can stand that down. But if you don't actually spend time knowing what happens to you physically,
mm.
then you can't stand that down before the brain loses control of itself. This bit, the prefrontal cortex, shuts down by about 40% under stress.
Right. So
So
you're
that
operating
person,
in your limbic, I'm assuming, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely in your limit. And wherever there's limbic friction, wherever there's this friction of, I might be the new person going to see a scary boss who's, they're not scary, but they're just senior. And I want to
Mm,
perform. I want to show them how clever I am. And I
mm,
knock on their door and they're working and everyone's got this open door policy, right? Everyone's got this open door policy. So detrimental to well-being. Open door policies are nonsense. And they're nonsense because I don't want to see you in my door all the time. I want to do chunks of work.
yeah.
And then I'm going to have my door open. And when it is open, I really want to engage with you. I want to invite you in. But when
Mm,
that door's shut, I'm doing some big, big work for 45 minutes now, and I don't want to be disturbed. But if I am disturbed, I'm going to be typing. I'm going to look up and I'm going to go, what? With this really grumpy face, fire up your limbic system. You're standing at my door of my office, and all you can think of is strawberries and tomatoes because you're now 40% more stupid than when you left your desk. And I don't know what your baseline is. Sam, we could be working quite hard here, Sam.
Yeah. If I'm 40% more stupid, then we're all in all sorts of trouble.
That's where you're starting from,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I started at
Yeah.
40%.
So Sally, like I completely agree with everything you've said there, and what a clear first step here is like being more attuned to our body, catching these sensations when they show, so you can see it coming. there's two things that I've noticed that could be obstacles for people doing this. One is the lack of physical awareness within themselves, because we're either always looking externally, we're looking on screens often, we've got technology in the mix, we're busy talking to somebody else, and our focus is outward rather than inward. And the second thing is pace. How fast we move through life, right? And especially in the workplace, one of the biggest pressures here, probably globally as well, is the deadlines, the everything stacking up. There's everything needs to be done yesterday, and there's realistically there's not enough hours in the day to do that workload and that capacity. So like these are the two biggest challenges that we're seeing. Sam, feel free to throw any more into the mix there if there are, but I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on that. How does somebody overcome them to really get attuned to themselves to be able to manage that stress response?
Yes, this is our distraction. This is our norepinephrine. So noradrenaline,
Yep.
adrenaline is energy. Epinephrine, it's our energy. It's great. In small bolus, in a small dose, it's our fight-flight response. But generally, on the premise we've slept well, we'll wake up with great levels of epinephrine and really naturally high levels of motivation-based dopamine. The problem is that we are literally, our phone is digital, of course our phone's digital. I mean, our watch is digital. Of course your phone's digital. Our watch is digital. Our phone's digital. And we're getting literally, we did some filming, and we had people doing a task. We had 52 people. They had to type for 1 hour a project that they really wanted to do. So we had cameras filming their hands. Their phone was allowed to be on their dominant hand, face up, and it was allowed to beep and pop and messages, but they weren't allowed to touch it. On their second screen, they had their email minimized. Over 1 hour, so 52 people, the age of 35 to 57, and in fact, the 57-year-old blew our data out because she was incredibly low. She was 35% away from anybody else with her response. But on average, and remember, you're not allowed to touch your phone for 1 hour. You're not allowed, you can look at it, you can't touch it. On average, people touch that phone 57 times. So once a minute, their hand, while they were typing, without their permission, below their consciousness, went out and touched their screen. So when we debrief, when the psychologists debrief, we had people get really, really aggressive. 2 young men were punch-up material. They were, I did not touch my screen. I didn't touch my screen. We showed that the film, one of the guys broke down and cried. He had no idea that this neuro pathway was so strong between his hand and this addictive dopamine drug, meth. That's the same drug, dopamine, as meth gives you, 57 times on average. The young men actually, one of them touched the phone 132 times in 1 hour.
Wow. So
every time you do that, every time that hand goes out and touches that phone, every time our eyes move, so when your eyes go and look at the minimized icon, then they come back to your screen, then they go to your phone, they come back. In 1 hour, their eyes, because we had eye tracking technology, their eyes moved over 360 times in 1 hour. Every time your eyes move, that's noradrenaline. It's keeping you hyper vigilant. It's keeping you active. So people are saying, and you will hear it, I'm sure, people say, oh, I've got ADHD. I know I've got ADHD. In fact, my belief is you have a distracted brain that is being driven by this addictive dopamine and these neuro pathways that are now so strong, and this norepinephrine every time our pupils move, we're hypervigilant. We just want to move. We can't concentrate. We want to move, and it's because our lifestyle. So if we did one thing, the one thing I would take out of all of my office environments is a phone on your desk. I would give people every hour, stand up, 10 minutes, go to the window, take your phone if you need to, do it away from your desk. When you come back to the desk, we're in flow. We are coming to work to do one piece of work at that time. We might be answering phones, proper phone calls, but we're not. And you really look at your own behavior now going forward. When you pick up your phone to look at a message, I absolutely guarantee you 92% of the time you'll touch another app to see if you happen to have WhatsApp message and you happen to have a messenger message. You will touch other apps just to see.
And so that's driving. That because
Yeah,
norepinephrine is the anxiety drug as well, isn't it? So that's driving this
yeah,
huge
absolutely.
anxiety.
Yep,
So then people
yep.
are being driven by that. They're getting levels of anxiety. It's increasing their stress response. And I think so people aren't doing this deep work, they're doing distracted work, which is so I guess if we go back to and one of our core kind of pillars here is keeping well-being leaders well. Because nobody looks after the people that do the looking after. And so this is the kind of point of wanting to start with this one, I think, is, put your own oxygen mask on first. You hear that a lot nowadays. But how can people, so if they're getting rid of their phone, they're doing focused work, sitting at their desk doing focused work, then getting up and taking a break and reading their phone. One of the other things I've heard you talk about, Sal, is doing that focused work in terms of shutting the door. I'm here to do this work. I go in and you talk about the feed the monkeys, right? So which is you go in the morning and have your conversations and then do your focused work, right? So just thinking about how
Yeah.
we can help people manage this stress in the workplace.
Yeah, invert your day. So absolutely invert your day. Everyone leaves their home
Mm,
with this delusional thought that when I arrive at work today, I'm going to go to my desk and I'm going to work on this project. You do this, Charlotte? I've got a plan in the morning when I get up, when I hit my desk, I'm going to work on this. Do you guys do that?
It depends where I'm working these days, but when I was working in busier office environments, we would adopt the manage by walking around, right? So the first thing you do is you go and you say hello, you kind of have a bit of that chit chat almost in the morning, make sure your team's on track and like you know what they're focused on, and you kind of help to
Yeah.
focus them, and then you go and kind of shut the door and lock yourself away for a
And that
time real.
And that's perfect, Charlotte. That's get your delegations out, go in. So if you are the person that sneaks into the office trying not to be seen, or I have leaders that say to me, I work for the first 2 hours of the day at home because otherwise I get no work done.
yeah.
Great. You've now got 43 people in your office under stress because they've got all these questions at 8 o'clock in the morning and you're not there till 10 o'clock.
Yep.
So either they're just doing was jigs and puzzles, or they're actually in a state of anxiousness because they can't proceed with their next task because they haven't got their delegation. So either if you're going to work from home for 2 hours in the morning, make sure your delegations are done at 4 p.m. in the afternoon so that
Mm,
everybody is set till lunchtime at least the next day.
mm,
Or invert your day, walk in the office and go, what do you need from me? And have you
mm,
got everything you need to be successful?
mm,
Serve your men and women. Check even to the point of go and make somebody a cup of tea whose face you can see they've just had a really bad morning. You
mm,
know that they've got young babies at home. Their partner might be away. You know what's happening in their home because you're a great leader. You know these things. What's going on after hours is your business. It's
mm.
not as a manager, but it is as a leader.
Yep.
Um, and then you can serve those people.
Mm,
And that's if we invert the way we think of it. When I serve people and I nurture them deeply, and they feel psychologically safe, I can actually work them harder, to be blunt. I get a lot more out of them if they are safe psychologically, they're well hydrated, they've
mm,
got humor in their life, they feel that there's this energy, they
mm.
know they've got great direction, they'll do anything for you.
Yeah.
They'll walk on coals for you.
Oh, I believe you. I mean, I feel like you're probably preaching to the choir here, and even the people that are listening to this, they are champions of well-being. They get the benefits of it. How do you, from your perspective,
Mm.
bridge that gap for the leaders who don't geek out on this stuff like we do, that don't believe in it as passionately as we do, because maybe there's the lack of awareness or education around it, and they haven't been exposed to it before? Like, how do you get them on side to know that that's true?
I think it's a great question, Shai. And that's one of the reasons I actually started running experiential programs using the wilderness because I would get those leaders that
Mm.
said, no, what you're talking about, all that soft stuff, it's nonsense. It's, don't need it. People just need to do what they're told. When you get somebody in the wilderness and they are wet, cold, and hungry,
Mm.
all of a sudden nurture becomes essential.
Yep.
Mm.
Direction doesn't become essential, nurture becomes essential.
Mm.
And I've got a couple of special forces guys that work with me. One's still serving, and the other served for 35 years. Or there's three of them now. Actually, I keep adopting these special forces guys and watch these men, and they just nurture deeply. They nurture their soldiers in the field. They do hard stuff. They eat once a day if they're lucky. They sleep 4 hours a day if they're lucky, but they nurture deeply. Are you okay? Do you need anything from me? I've got your back. Trust, 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 trust,
Mm.
trust. Oxytocin, oxytocin, oxytocin. This is just a pharmacy. We own a pharmacy and you're the pharmacist. And so if you're a leader, your role is to get the body, the subconscious body of your men and women producing the right chemicals so they feel safe. And you just do it by serving them. It's actually really simple.
Nice. Love that. Yeah. So just being there and being available and actually making yourself being kind, connecting is a really good way to dampen the stress response.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean you're not going to make critical decisions under pressure, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to make really hard, big decisions. I remember as a military officer
Mm,
taking over a commanding officer role and having the police worked for me, and some of the policemen had police dogs,
mm,
and some of these policemen were morbidly obese and couldn't run, and a dog's a weapon. It's not just a pet, it's a weapon. And
mm,
so I had to go through this unit, and I took 4 working dogs off their handlers for
mm,
about 7 months but I trained personally every day with those men till
mm,
they were able to pass their fitness test. When I took their dogs off them and had the conversations, I had tears streaming down my face.
mm.
Not so much because I was sad, but that was a neurobiological response to stress. I'm a leaker under stress, but it was my command role to take a dangerous weapon
Yeah.
of a serviceman that wasn't capable of handling it, and
Yeah.
then get them fit enough to give them back to them and reunite them with their animals. So it
Nice.
didn't mean because it was uncomfortable and it was sad, it didn't mean I didn't do it. I had to do it, and I felt it, empathized, I felt it deeply. But
Yes.
you have to make the critical decisions.
Yeah.
But it
I
doesn't mean you have to be hard.
No, exactly. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And that, like, I was having this conversation the other day. Someone said, "Well, do empathy and performance coexist?" And my answer was absolutely yes. They can be the same. They should be the same thing, right? You should be empathetic in order, and that doesn't mean just being nice all the time. And I had a really good
No.
role model of this growing up, right? Like my dad's firm but fair. And so that's, that's for me what it is, right? Is just because just because there's a hard conversation to have, it doesn't mean I don't have it. And that actually,
Mm.
when people know that in a business, it gives them the opportunity. They know where, and I've had this feedback before, is I know where I stand with you, Sam, because I'm direct, but I'm still kind when I do it. Sometimes I have to work on that for
Yeah.
sure. Sometimes I have the
Yeah.
smacked bottom face. But yeah, for sure, that's something which I think helps calm people down. Yeah,
Yeah, and Sam, knowing where you yourself go under pressure. So I go high eagle, I go predator, I go competitive,
yeah,
absolute military soldier. I'm going to win this war. And I had to train during my 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s to actually soften while I'm pushing.
yeah,
So because when I was a young woman, I was an athlete, I was competitive, man, and I would break people. I've got this energy and this passion, and I can just run and like just go and drive and drive and drive, and I don't refuel. I don't need much refueling other than just the joy of success, the joy of driving, the joy of hunting, the joy of that competitiveness.
mm,
And I've surrounded myself with people who are able to bring it to my attention. And I've
mm.
got an amazing operations officer, and she'll literally just look at me when I come in with that face, and she'll just go to me, "Mm-mm. You need to go
Yeah.
back to your office, and you need to wash that attitude out of your mouth."
That's super interesting because one thing that we see on the ground a
Yeah.
lot is stress addiction, right?
Mm,
We see that like there are people are high performers like you, they like that adrenaline rush, they like to accomplish, and they're making high stakes decisions, and it's so easy to get stuck into that.
yeah.
And yet it's draining at the same time. So you've almost got this contradiction happening internally, but then teams are seeing it as well and modeling it. I'd love to hear your kind of thoughts on that.
Yeah, so you can't sustain that level of energy of adrenal release. You will end up with adrenal fatigue.
Mm,
Absolutely, there's no issue. It's just the adrenal glands just cannot keep because they're producing cortisol as well.
Yeah.
So adrenaline, epinephrine, and cortisol are coming from the same spot, and so they are literally. And you do absolutely get addicted to that adrenal response,
Mm.
and it's that the trick for me is, so I've designed a model, the Impact 4Q model, and it's one of my books, and it's about running 100 hour, being able to run 100-hour week, but you do these squeezes like a piano accordion, and then you release just for 35 minutes, 40 minutes, and literally that's all it takes for that cortisol to work out of your liver. And to work out of your system, and then you reapply the pressure back in, and you go back in hard, and then you do it. So all day, and your whole business year looks like that. There's going to be squeezes, and we release, squeeze, and people, and I notice my husband still to this day finds it very frustrating when we're incredibly busy, and he'll come in to my office, and I'm reading a book, and I'm having a cup of tea, and it's like, I thought you're busy. I'm like, I am so incredibly busy, but I'm actually refreshing at the moment, so I can go hard next moment. So if I don't ease off, so if I don't piano accordion, so I end up, the model looks at a whole office and how the office runs, the synchrony of their day. And and particularly law firms, accountancy firms, engineering, high left brains, who end up with massive stress because they tend to, as a generalization, be low on the empathy side. So they become a little aggressive under pressure or dictatorial under pressure as a generalization. They literally need to be taught how to just relax and look out the window, pull your vision out of tunnel vision just by sweeping your eye around 180 degrees of a window. You will actually shut down their stress response. Breathing out for 2 seconds longer than you breathe in. So in through nose, out through those pursed lips. 2 seconds longer you breathe in. Absolutely. Physiologically, you can't not slow your heartbeat. So they're the things, the physical things that we need to do in the middle of the stress. Just and then you can go, oh my gosh, you can go so hard.
I love that so much. Somebody introduced to me a number of years ago now the idea of navigation and acceleration is knowing when do we navigate, when are we looking around, when are we figuring out that next move, and when are we just go, go, go. Because I was somebody who was very much in that acceleration mode, and I would keep going until I couldn't, right? And it often wasn't my decision at that point, right? And then it was only later I was like, I need a recovery element to this as well. Like the acceleration and navigation was great because it pulled me out of acceleration and made me still feel productive during navigation times, but I had to then go a step further and make sure there was like a recovery season in there to make sure that I actually switched off completely, and that happens now on a day-to-day basis rather than just monthly, weekly, and so on.
Yeah, that's great. And sleep performance, to be blunt, you cannot out nutrition or out exercise poor sleep. It's just nothing. The one thing in the world where the brain heals itself, and physically and mentally, so your self-counseling, your fixing your problems happens in second phase of REM sleep. And if you don't sleep well, because REM sleep slides with you, so when you go to sleep and you go to sleep late because you've been tossing and turning, your 7 hours of REM sleep don't happen. So you wake up in phase 2 and you interrupt where the brain is now making context of things. So what it's doing in that second phase of REM sleep, it's taking out blame, it's taking out shame, it's doing spatial, it's actually walking you back through the new building that you went into today. It's, if you play golf, it's actually running you through that whole game and every shot you played. And so that's all happening in that second phase of REM sleep, and that's the phase that we miss. And when you wake up in the middle of REM sleep, the brain goes, oh, we didn't sort that stuff out. I'm going to put all those troubles and all that friction back onto your prefrontal cortex for the morning. And you're in the cycle of doom. So if you're not sleeping, and sleeping is lights, overhead lights off, it's rituals and routines, it's not eating for 2 to 3 hours before bed, it's no alcohol for 4 to 6 hours. So professional advice, drink at lunchtime. And don't drink at all. It's much better.
It's funny because a lot of people's arguments that we hear this a lot is, but I fall asleep better after a glass of wine or when I'm watching TV. It's like you might doze off, but you're not going to get into those deeper sleep states that you actually need for that deep sense of recovery. Is that fair to say, Sally?
Yeah, absolutely. You're having micro breaks all the time. And the other thing is, so during the day, our mitochondria is burning energy. and it's forming a debris called adenosine, a leftover called adenosine. Adenosine drives sleep. So, have you sat at the end of the day about 8:30, 9 o'clock, and you sort of doze off on the couch in front of TV a little bit, and you're like, oh, I'm so tired, I should just go to bed. And by the time you've cleaned your teeth and you've done that and you go to bed, you're not tired anymore. Or you fall asleep. I talk to a lot of people that actually sleep on the couch for a couple of hours between sort of 8:30 and 10:30, and then they wake up and they're wide awake.
Yeah.
So we're misconstruing adenosine, which pushes sleep. We're misconstruing that for melatonin, which pulls sleep. So melatonin is our sleep drug, and we need to build that over an hour and a half to 2 hours to build enough melatonin to pull us through the night. And the interesting thing with synthetic melatonin, and often comes from pigs if it's not made in a laboratory, just saying, synthetic melatonin doesn't bind with serotonin. So it doesn't stay in the system very long. It washes out, urinates out within 2 to 3 hours. So you can use synthetic melatonin prescribed or bought off the shelves. As soon as you take a prescribed or a synthetic melatonin, your own hormone system, your melatonin system, basically stops working because it says I don't have to. So you're no longer making natural melatonin. You're relying on synthetic melatonin, and therefore you're literally in this cycle of you can't come off it.
Yeah, right. So you're actually
but
shutting down.
We won't go there tonight. But yeah,
your body's own
it's a hormone.
Yeah, right. Your body's own ability to actually pull your sleep through the night, and then that's the knock-on effect of you waking up feeling anxious, being stressed throughout the day, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So
I teach this to my staff. That's what I do. That would be my biggest key. My biggest gift would be to teach my staff how to sleep properly.
Yeah, right. Well, you've been trying to teach me how to sleep properly, so I'm appreciative of that. So we ask we we ask every guest we have on here one thing they want to bin, and one thing for the bin and one thing for the win. So what's the well-being practice for the bin for you, Sally?
Is cell phones at the office desk beside the keyboard. They're just a no-go. Cell phones go in your top drawer on your non-dominant hand, shut away, and they are off your desk. Otherwise, literally, you are just in this constant state of agitation. I'd put a water bottle where my phone normally sits. I'd put a water bottle, and that hand will go out and touch that. It'll touch that water bottle 60 times an hour because your neural pathway is basically programmed to do that. So that would be my bin. Not saying don't have it. Hop up, walk away from the desk, use it, come back to the desk, put it away. So it's rituals. We're getting into flow. And my keep would be gamifying well-being. So I love what Level Up's doing with Graham Perry in Dubai at the moment. So his Level Up app, they've gamified that. They've changed it completely. So the whole organizations are having this sort of competition around well-being and sport and now sleep apps. So I think that's a great way. You come in the morning, and there's a little tiny story I've got to tell you. Some Australian Special Forces guys that I know, they used to come in every Monday morning to the unit and basically say what they got up to on the weekend and how many beers they drank and how many girls that they had dances with. And so there was this very masculine, misogynistic culture around drinking and late nights and that type of thing, which wasn't serving them well. So the unit went out and bought basically 35 Oura rings and stuck it on this particular unit. So every man now had an Oura ring. As me, I'm holding onto my Oura ring. And so now Monday mornings, they had to upload their data. So now we're looking at their heart rate variability. Now we're looking at their sleep stats. So they gamified it. And literally up on their whiteboard every morning, these men would be rushing around. My resting pulse was 42. My heart rate variability was 138. And so now we gamified it into actually we're going for well-being, we're going for performance versus this very old-fashioned misogynistic way of thinking that was okay to socialize like that. And it didn't serve anybody. So I love that. That would be a keeper for me, is gamify well-being in the workplace, make it joyful and fun and competitive. We love to compete.
Amazing. Okay.
I love that so much. Sally, thank you so much for coming on the show. I would love for you to share with our listeners, actually, before we go, is where can they come and find you, follow your work, read your books. I know I'll be doing a deep dive into your work just off the back of this conversation of me and you today. So where can we find you?
Sally Duxfield, DUXFIELD.com. I'm going to send you a link to the Perfect Sleep Cycle, which is just a little video that you can share with your listeners. They can look at that on my website and my books. I love to Zoom with people around sleep performance if they want to talk to me. And the other thing I love to do is I love to Zoom into a workplace and just drop in a 60 to 90-minute session around the neuroscience piece of stress so that people really understand it. Because all the beautiful work that you guys do, I don't do that. And so it's this gorgeous sort of layering of well-being. If we understand this chemistry, then we understand the practices and the psychology piece that you guys are doing so beautifully. And they just add so much value to each other. So yeah, sallyduxfield.com, and reach out, and I'd be delighted to Zoom into your workplace. But I will send you that video so you can share that with your team. And I'll probably send a couple on cortisol as well, so the teams can look at that and share that with their teams, hopefully.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you, Sally. And if you're liking the podcast, please subscribe, share it with your colleagues, and of course, let us know in any comments what you want to hear more of, what you want to hear less of, and yeah, please share it with your colleagues, as I say. So, Sally, thank you again for coming on. Pleasure to spend some time with you, and hopefully we will see you soon.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Charlotte. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
No worries.